The fifth set will be played on Korhal, Floating Island. Spawning in the bottom right-hand position, the blue Terran from STX Seoul. His name is Innovation.
His opponent is Orange Terran from SK Telecom T1. His name is Fantasy.
Innovation said Sal Sal Yo before the match started, which means go easy, please.
Innovation saying go easy?
I don't know, man. I hope he's mentally recovered from his
well,
match
I think he's just trying to
Solky.
mess with his opponent's mind, saying, I'm still trying to recover from the loss at WCS Finals.
Hey, we'll have to see. This is going to be, I think, a big kind of like thing for Innovation, because if we don't see the level of play we saw from him recently, then it's going to kind of set the pace for him for the rest of, I want to say, almost the year, or at least the next few months.
And also, if you think about it, he has WCS Finals coming up this weekend.
He does.
The Grand Finals, not the WCS Korea Finals, by the way.
Yeah,
and Fantasy, if you just look at the numbers, he has more wins overall in Pro League. He is a veteran comparing Innovation and Fantasy. But Innovation, of course, he is doing much better than Fantasy in Starcraft2.
Yeah, definitely a big point to make here. Fantasy has been, struggling in and out of Code S. He's been showing some success, and he's continuing to improve, I think, at a slow rate. But I don't know. I can see Fantasy as someone that will eventually be like one of these top tier players, and he's getting there, but he's not there just yet. And looks like we have a pretty fast gas here from Fantasy. He's really opting to go for the more aggressive builds in Starcraft 2 from what I've seen here. Innovation getting his racks up as well. He's got a little bit less gas than his opponent because he, of course, went for the racks first. There. So we'll probably end up seeing a pretty fast factory from Fantasy, although he can still definitely get that reactor down and go for some fast Reapers.
Most likely factory because he has enough gas just to go for the factory as soon as the barracks finishes.
Now the Reaper is going to be going down for Innovation now. Going to use that to scout his opponent here. And he's going to go ahead and make an expansion behind that in his natural. Fantasy opting to be more aggressive with his opener before getting his expansion.
I mean, this is what Fantasy loves to do in Brood War, using the vultures back in Brood War to harass his opponent as much as possible. And in StarCraft 2, using the Hellions, it didn't work out as well for Fantasy. He tried to do some micros here and there, but it just didn't work out. So now he found the answer in Heart of the Swarm using the Hellbats.
Indeed he has. Second gas finishing up here for Fantasy. I'm actually really curious if he's going to go for a Cloak Banshee build or not.
We still have to wait and see.
Because I remember reading about the Cloak Banshee build, and apparently it's something that Polt stared doing somewhat recently.
Yeah.
And then we had a few NA players kind of copy him, like the Muslim, and they had some really good success with it.
And in fact, we see a tech lab, but Innovation does not scout it.
No, he doesn't. That's actually really important. But no, he's going to move over here and potentially scout it.
And now he scouts everything.
So he knows what's going on here. Will he get the proper defense up in time? He's getting a factory of his own here.
Banshees? Oh, it's been a while, but I know how to defend against it. In fact, I defended against it many times back in Wings.
Like, watch him end up going for a Thor Rush. It's like, no, that's not going to happen.
He already lifted.
Yeah. All right, there's the
out of the way. Yeah.
Wow. I'm actually surprised I called that correctly there, but I got it, man.
I mean,
I had a feel, man. I had a feel for it.
You had a feel, and you got it right. That's all that matters. But Innovation, he scouted what is coming to his way, so now all he has to do is build a starport and build a Viking behind this while saving up some energy for the scans.
Yeah. He's getting 2 Widow Mines here. May go for the drop first, though. Picking that off, actually really important. I'm not sure if he actually got to see the add-on there. Oh, he didn't see it. He doesn't know.
He should have some idea that the attack is coming on his way because,
he's getting the engineering bay now.
So he should have some idea. He doesn't have 100% confirmation, but the 100% confirmation that he has is that Fantasy does not have a natural at the same time as Innovation does.
Indeed.
Which means that Innovation, he's telling himself, well, even if I lose some SCVs here and there, it's okay because I have 2 command centers, my opponent only has 1.
Fantasy also has a Widow Mine here. He may try to use that Banshee.
Look at the Widow Mine placement.
Ooh. Okay, so
he's completely prepared.
Innovation knows what's up, man.
Yeah.
He knows what's up.
And Fantasy really needs to be careful because if the Banshee actually goes on top of the Widow Mines, then the game might be over. I mean, well, the game will still go on, but Fantasy will be so behind.
Oh, the
compared to
Viking
Innovation.
just narrowly missing the Banshee here. And so the Banshee's going to move in here. This is more of a Wings of Liberty style opening where you use the Banshee to harass your opponent, but Innovation, man, completely prepared. He's got units everywhere, and this like Fantasy's like trying to do some damage here, but it's not going to happen. Are we going to see the scan go down?
And
scan
goodbye.
goes down. Banshee dies. Only one
That was
SCV kill.
One SCV for one Banshee. I'll take it any day. Behind this, their Helbet's out on the way for Innovation.
Indeed, they are.
He does have the Banshee for defense, but he needs more than one Banshee to defend against Hellbat drops efficiently if he decides to use it defensively instead of trying to harass more SCVs.
All right, well, this Banshee over here is going to get a kill or two. Low on health, up to 3 kills. The Vikings, though, are they going to go ahead and scan and kill that?
I don't think he has enough energy right now.
Looks like it. We have a third command center on the way from Fantasy as well, so he's going to try to use that to get back in the economic game.
The problem is, what does he have against the Hellbats inside the main base? There is a siege tank coming out. There is additional Banshees coming out by Fantasy. By Innovation, if he just micros the Hellbats with the medevacs completely, then he can roast a lot of SCVs.
A third Banshee out for Fantasy now, and it spots the dropship here. It's going to move over to that natural. There's only one turret for defense, which is a little bit discerning because Fantasy actually needs a good amount of units here to defend against the Hellbats.
And here we go. There is a siege tank inside the main base, but the Hellbats are going to drop regardless inside the main base.
Uh-oh, Fantasy. He's got to be perfectly prepared here. He's got a lot of Marines. Okay, so he's going to go ahead and scare that away. Another scan goes down to take out that Banshee.
I always mention this because the first Hellbat is just, trying to scare your opponent. But we got 2 additional medevacs out on the way by Innovation, and he can go for multiple drops inside the main base and at natural.
Now, Fantasy, he is a little bit behind the SCV count. He's killed up to 8 workers here. He still has another Banshee out on the map as well. And because he got his third command center up faster than his opponent, he'll eventually be able to, use his economy. But oh, hold that thought. We have a huge Hellbat drop. And the natural here, the Marine's going to scare away the Hellbats for now.
And boost out. Well, no boost until the very last second. One of the medevac also...
Hold on a second. There's a Widow Mine over here from Fantasy. Is it going to hit? I think he got it.
I think something happened in the middle of the map. I saw a flashing blue unit.
Yeah. It's really hard to tell if there's a Widow Mine. Like, the observer wants to click through. He's like, I'm not sure if I should click there or not.
That is so hard to see from this side, actually. I'm surprised he caught that.
Yeah.
So
it's just
I mean, we're looking at a TV that's like, a few feet away from us.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to spot that in the minimap for us.
Well, still excellent positioning with the Widow Mines there from Fantasy. And that's Innovation may be like, well, I think a Widow Mine hit my unit. I have no idea where it is. All right,
now,
so
Innovation, if he tries to go for a drop again, he needs to be careful, but behind this, Innovation is getting constant Hellbats and transitioning into mech.
So we're going to have the classic bio versus mech.
Well, hold on. We do have another drop at the natural.
There's a lot of Marines here, but the Hellbats are going to be able to...
Those are 6 Hellbats.
There's a siege tank in the back now. Marines being pulled off the mineral line, and just the Hellbats, man, they can tank. They have a lot of health to them. No SCVs die, to the credit of Fantasy. Still got a lot of units here, but he's going to be going to that biomech composition using the siege tanks with the Marines, medevacs, Marauders against the pure Hellbat. Looks like there's going to be some Vikings, some tanks, and maybe even a few medevacs in the mix.
So now the tech has, gone 2 different ways completely. Fantasy, he loves to go for the bio in this particular matchup in Starcraft2. Innovation, he could still play bio here and there, but sometimes he throws in mech, and knowing that he's slightly ahead of his opponent with the Banshee doing nothing and the Hellbat doing a nice damage on the SCVs, he decided to go for mech. In fact, if you look at the SCV count, Fantasy is slightly ahead at this point because the third command center has been off for a long time.
No, it has. Also, Innovation, he really only has Hellbats right now.
Yeah.
Nice scan, by the way, killing off that Widow Mine in a...
I still have no idea how you saw that.
I saw it on the mini-map.
Well, there's another Hellbat drop inside the main base, killing some SCVs. Fantasy needs to get those SCVs out of there.
The SCVs going down. The Marauders going to eventually take out the Hellbats here.
Yeah, and Fantasy is aware of every single Hellbat drops this time around. He's pulling the SCVs at the right timing, but here is a second drop once again.
Uh-oh, Fantasy needs to prepare for this. He doesn't have any units here for defense. SCV is instantly being pulled off the mineral line, though. Excellent defense from him, only losing a few workers to his credit. And now bringing back some Marines and Marauders, he's going to be able to kill off those Hellbats as well. I'd like to see a few more turrets from Fantasy here just to make sure that the Hellbats can't do what they want to do. Supply-wise, Fantasy is a bit behind his opponent. Also, his macro slipping a little bit here, up to over 1K now, going down again.
Remember, he's not known for macro.
Yeah,
he's known for his micro compared to his macro, and look at this innovation going for the drop once again. But I want to see multiple drops instead of dropping at one location, because now Fantasy exactly knows that, you know, where the Hellbat is going to drop after seeing one medevac. And the power of the Hellbat drops with multiple medevacs is that the Terran players drop at a different location at the same time.
Getting a bunker in the mineral line, that's a great way that we saw Innovation deal with the Hellbat drops from his opponent Flash when they played in the Code S.
Well, look at this. Both players are moving out on the map. Innovation on the left side, Fantasy on the right side. But if Fantasy realizes this, then Innovation can actually get trapped over here.
Oh, Innovation, I think he's actually going to get trapped over here.
Yeah. If Fantasy knows about it, if he goes around, then he's going to get trapped
on the bottom
of the ramp. All Fantasy has to do is buy enough time to attack from two locations at once.
Ooh, this could be very, very bad for Innovation. He's trying to reinforce in this position. There's already a bunker, though, at the main base here. It's getting shelled by the tanks. Fantasy getting ready to move in position here. He's going to go for a potential sandwich, using the stemmed units on the top to attack the tanks and the Hellbats.
And also surrounding from the bottom.
As well, he's splitting up his units decently here. Needs to go for the tanks. That's what he's doing. Hellbat drop, though, on the tanks as well. Fantasy lifting up a lot of units. They're going to drop them right on the siege tanks as well. He's going to be able to pick those off quite easily. It's just drop after drop from both sides.
Yeah, Fantasy actually handled that very well, but Innovation also handling very well at the last second as he drops the Hellbats on the siege tanks, forcing Fantasy to pull his siege tanks at the last second.
Kind of the even trade there. No real victor behind this, though. We have Innovation grabbing a fourth expansion. Fantasy, is he going for a fourth of his own? Well,
he should go for it pretty soon, but remember, power of Innovation's army right now is going for the siege tanks, and Fantasy killed a lot more siege tanks than Innovation. If you look at the siege tank count, yes, Innovation is slightly ahead in the siege tank count because he's going for a pure mech. But Fantasy did a nice job cutting some of the army at the left side instead of getting trapped inside the main base.
Innovation still has a very strong-looking army, though.
Uh-oh. No turrets.
No turrets over here for defense. No units at all. He's building a command center over there. Fantasy deciding to move across the map here with his main army as well. Innovation moving out. Pretty similar location. And this expansion most likely going to be forced to lift off here. I think maybe even taken out. The siege tank positioning really good for Innovation.
This is not working out for Fantasy at all. As the SCVs are getting roasted at the third base, while the siege tanks, there's only 4 versus 8 in this particular location. Command Center does not even get lifted as Fantasy loses every single one of his siege tanks.
Fantasy down pretty hard in supplies now. We're just seeing the power of mech versus bio in this matchup here.
Especially since Fantasy was behind in the beginning of the game.
Yeah, we're coming from behind with the bio. It kind of nullifies the advantage of going bio versus mech early on. You don't have the supply advantage, the ability to constantly drop and throw away units.
In fact, look at the supply right now. 180 from Innovation to 141 of Fantasy.
All right.
And this might be a killing blow.
Innovation moving forward. Fantasy has to move back, re-siege up. He has a drop going on in Innovation's natural, but I'm not sure if that even matters at this point.
Well, he can kill a lot of SCVs at the natural while trading away the third base.
Oh, it looks like the drop is handled anyway.
Ideal for Fantasy. Look at this Innovation just trying to trap his opponent, and now Fantasy is now fortified into 4 bases. He needs to take down the rocks at the left side, which is not ideal at this point because now Fantasy, if he wants to take a 4th base, he needs to defend at 2 locations at once.
I feel like this is going to be a slow death for Fantasy if he can't take an additional expansion. Uh-oh, Innovation moving in here.
Innovation does not want to wait. He knows that there's only 5 siege tanks from his opponent. A lot of bio forces went for the drop, which means that Innovation, he could just melt this third command center.
The Hellbats doing their damage there. The 3 medevacs full of units. I think that there's just too much spread from Fantasy here. He doesn't have his units consolidated. He's dropping now at the natural. There's not a lot of units for defense here from Innovation. He is bringing some tanks, though, which can at least fortify the position near the lower end of their ramp at the natural. Supplies now 134 to 157. Can Fantasy make a comeback here as long as he can keep that 3rd base alive and do a lot of economic damage in this position?
Well, the problem is he can't keep the 3rd base.
All right, well, if he can't keep the 3rd base, then...
He doesn't have a bio ball to actually take out the siege tanks. If he can drop on top of them right now, then it's really fantastic. In fact, if you look at the supply right now, Innovation still ahead, 70 SCVs to 51 SCVs of Fantasy, and eventually Innovation is going to defend against the multiple drops that Fantasy has. Fantasy cannot take out the siege tanks.
That's the biggest thing here. Fantasy can't actually deal with this army head on, and the Vikings here killing off the medevacs quite fast, going to prevent the turrets from going up again, but these tanks are going to move in here and just shred apart this army.
I mean, yeah, Fantasy is doing a nice job trying to buy as much time as possible to get some units out and trying to take out the siege tanks. But the problem is Innovation is so far ahead, and now the multiple drops that Fantasy wants to go for, it's going to get defended relatively easily.
Let's not forget these are +3 mech siege tanks from Innovation as well. They got a lot of firepower behind them. All right, well, Fantasy, he needs to take this other base over here if he wants to get back into this game. The biggest thing to worry about here, though, is the supply deficit for Fantasy and the lack of air control and the fact that he's behind an entire base and was behind 2 bases for a long period of time.
So basically everything.
Yeah. Fantasy's behind in every single way.
I mean, Fantasy is doing a nice job trying to go for a drop, trying to kill a lot of SCVs to try to buy some time to come back into this game. But he can't face the army head on. That is the biggest problem. You need to eventually take out the siege tanks from your opponent to win the game.
Yeah, I feel like Mech is so much better in Heart of the Storm because the Hellbats are so tanky, man. And they do a great amount of damage they can be used to harass
It was
as well.
perfect for Innovation because his opponent, Fantasy, went for the Banshee. It did nothing, which means that he was already ahead at the point. So if you're ahead, just go for the mech because your opponent is not going to have enough Bio Ball to start attacking you before the mech player can max out.
Fantasy down to 39 workers as well. He's trying to move in here, make something happen. The Viking fleet over here going to easily take out both of those medevacs, and there's tanks and Hellbats over here.
Yeah.
Fantasy, there's really nothing he can do right now.
Let's talk about this a little bit more. Bio, the power comes when the Bio player can max out before the mech army, and the Bio player starts dropping multiple locations while taking out the siege tanks one by one with Marines and Marauders. But in this game, it wasn't going to happen at all because Fantasy was so behind. So if you look at the supply throughout the whole game, Innovation, yes, he is the one going for the mech. However, Innovation is the one going for the mech, and he is always ahead in supply of Fantasy, who's going for Bio. You never see this happen unless the opponent who is going for the Bio is so far behind in the game.
I got 2 things here for you, S&M. 2 tanks versus 22 tanks.
I got 2 words. Fantasy, timing.
Oh. I think that Fantasy's got more than 99 problems this game.
Well, he's still trying his best, trying to win this game, knowing that SK Telecom T1, if they lose in this set number 5, then at least it's going to get dragged into the ace match if SK Telecom T1 wants to win today.
No. You know what? This is the Fantasy GG timing that we love talking about.
I just said that. Fantasy timing.
Fantasy timing, man.
At this point, Fantasy, I'm just repeating the words right now because, I don't want to say that it's over until Fantasy GGs.
So let's talk about the 6th set.
Well,
here we go.
From Fantasy, and actually the siege tanks were caught out of position.
Oh, this is actually really good for Fantasy. He was going for one big attack.
And he has one timing attack. He should just go for it right now instead of turning back.
He's got to go for it, but will he have enough to take out the reinforcements? If he can strike the production facilities of Innovation and potentially make something happen, can he come back in this game? Scanning going to go ahead and kill one tank on the top. High ground, the supply is now 125 to 160. Don't forget that Fantasy has half the amount of SCVs of his opponent here.
He needs to take out the command center over there, and he needs to take out the planetary fortress on the left side at the very least, because the siege tanks are just thwarting away inside the main base of Fantasy.
As time goes on, things are just going to get better and better for Innovation as well. He's got the production. He's shelling on the main base of Fantasy right now. The production for him is going to be limited to almost nothing. And Innovation, he's pretty solidified there on that high ground area.
So attack was really nice, but Fantasy, it was a really nice engagement, by the way. It
was a great
every
engagement.
single siege tanks. That's the engagement that Fantasy had hoped for the past 10 games. Not past 10 games, but past 10 minutes in this game.
This is why Fantasy never GGs, man, until he knows it's over. He's going to push and fight tooth and nail. So, I can respect that.
So now, look at this. He's going to surround from 2 locations, and the siege tanks are going to get taken out relatively easily. Yep.
All right, the Bio's moving in here, maybe a little bit hastily because the other Bio not over on there at the same time, and that was actually...
that was a no-no.
That
you
was
shouldn't have. That just.
This was a mistake.
Yeah, that was a huge mistake by Fantasy. He was supposed to attack at the same time.
I think that's what he intended on doing, but he may have accidentally got a little overeager, or
he mistimed it.
Yeah, he mistimed that. Well, Fantasy, his economy right now is in shambles. Innovation has got, you know, some nice expansions here on the left and right side of his main base. Oh, this is a lot of units here from Innovation moving forward.
And now it's Fantasy who's getting trapped from both sides as Fantasy is going to try to eat away on the Hellbest, but this is too many siege tanks and the Hellbest from Innovation.
He's eventually is going to fall back and get hit by the tanks on the other side here. Fantasy moving forward, going to take out one more tank, but I think that's going to pretty much be it from Fantasy. He's got no units left.
181 supply to 51 of Fantasy as Innovation is just slowly killing Fantasy.
All right, GG, there we go. The famous Fantasy GG timing happens, especially, this is a good example of that, I have to say. But Innovation playing a very solid game. Fantasy trying to do some harassment early on, but Innovation completely prepared, and he just rides that advantage throughout the entire game.
So with score being 3-2, we are going to go into set number 6 on Neo Planet S.
The players are going to be Classic and Rain. It's going to be a PvP. Rain, of course, known for being a very dominant player in all of his matchups.
But Classic, he's been playing so solid in Heart of the Swarm. In fact, he is 6-2, starting in round number 4.
So can Classic take out the ace player from SK Telecom, Rain, or will Rain continue, you know, doing what he does best in Pro League? Find out after this commercial break.